Okay, we were doing this problem about what percentage of people have IQs in certain ranges. So, part D, and I'm going to go ahead and draw another curve here. So here it is again, not the best looking one, doesn't matter. So we have 100, and the standard deviation is 15, so we add 15 each time going to the right. And we subtract 15 each time going to the left of the mean. So part D says we want the percentage of people with an IQ less than 55. Oops, that's not percent. So if we mark on our graph, here's 55, and we want the percentage of area that is over here in this part I just shaded light blue. So if you recall, that's less than 3 standard deviations. We just need to go back to our other picture, and you see that from 3 standard deviations left on this graph, so from the purple line to the left, is 0.15%. So the answer is 0.15%. Okay, for part E, we want to know what IQ is 1.5 standard deviations below the mean. Okay, first of all, remember every time we go one way or the other from the mean, we are either adding multiples of the standard deviation if we're going to the right, or we're subtracting if we go to the left. So remember, our mean is 100, and our standard deviation is 15. So if we wanted to get 70, we would take the mean and we subtract 2 times the standard deviation, and that would give us 70. And if you go back to our graph, 70 is 2 standard deviations below the mean. Hence the reason we multiplied 2 times the standard deviation. So given that, if we want the IQ that's 1.5 standard deviations below the mean, to answer the actual question now, we have the mean is 100 and the standard deviation is 15. So we would take the mean, and since we're looking for a value below, we subtract. And we want 1.5 standard deviations. So we take 1.5 and multiply it by the standard deviation. And that gives us 100 minus 1.5 times 15 is 22.5. And if we do the subtraction, we get 77.5. So that means an IQ of 77.5 is 1.5 standard deviations below, I guess we should say, is the IQ that is 1.5 standard deviations below the mean. Okay, so you guys should pause the video. And part F was what IQ is 2.23 standard deviations above the mean. So pause the video, try to do this, and when you've gotten an answer, come back and see if you're right. Okay, now that you've tried it, and I'm going to draw a picture with this one. We know the mean is 100. We know one standard deviation above the mean is 115. This is the same picture we've drawn before. 130, 145. Then going the other way, we have 85, 70, and 55. Notice this picture is even worse than they normally are, but that's okay. Everything's labeled. Doesn't matter how good your picture is. So if we need 2.23 standard deviations above the mean, we know that 130 is 2 standard deviations and 145 is 3 standard deviations. So the number we're looking for has to be somewhere in here. So again, we take the mean and we're going to add, in this case, 2.23 standard deviations. So that's 100 plus 2.23 times 15. So that's 100 plus 33.45. And so that means 133.45. So an IQ of 133.45 is the IQ that is 2.23 standard deviations above the mean. That is it for section 3.2. We're skipping section 3.3, so the next videos will be for 3.4.